Welcome to FinFactor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun Cash Flow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Azat Ospanov, founder of Oscorp, where they consult with businesses on the best practices for implementing financial technology into their organization. And today we'll explore the question, is your best choice for your new ERP the one you already have? Welcome to the show, Azat.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, what I want to kick off with, first of all, is what are the risks? What are the dangers of implementing the wrong ERP? I am sure you've seen a lot of issues in this area. What sort of risks do businesses have if they pick the wrong ERP?
So there is a lot of risk that will encompass in the migration of an ERP, choosing the software. The one I see the most and is the most important to avoid is and it will make us lose a lot of time is choosing the wrong ERP and going forward with it, where the solution will not be working in the future, and we have a pitfall where we adopt it, we try to use it, we force ourselves against the system, we try to force it within the organization, and then we realize, okay, this is not a good software, this is not the right solution for me, and we go back to the step one. This is where usually the biggest wastage of time or resources that will happen. So that's where I prefer to take more time in the beginning, just assessing the needs, what kind of software we need, what are our own internal reporting needs, resource need, to make sure that once we choose it, that we go with it for the long term. Because when we're talking about an implementation of an ERP, usually we're talking about a time frame of 10 to 20 years. We don't want to implement something just to change it in a few years. And this is where it's important to look at it, say, okay, is this something that will solve my problem? And is this something that I can maintain on the long term? So yeah.
Yeah, I've seen, of course, we talk with businesses all the time, and I've seen, frankly, exactly that problem. And the challenge for a business, yeah, it when you said, plan for 10 to 20 years, that should, get people's attention. That's a long time, but I can see that it could take quite a long time to select it, to implement it, train everybody, get buy-in, get the system up and running. You don't want to go changing it after that. You want to have it for the long term. And what we see all the time is businesses that have, they got one factor they got to deal with maybe in their industry. So oftentimes they'll get an ERP that's specialized for their industry, and it does that one thing really good and often nothing else. And then they're stuck, right? So what have you seen? Like, tell me a couple of stories that you've seen where things have just gone a little bit wrong, where they had to go back to the beginning.
There's going to be multiple, let's say, factors that will come to that situation. So first, it's either the system is too heavy to use. So we see a lot of time invested in the use of the system to maintain all the records. And in the end, we realize that, okay, it's taking more time than the previous system. We get the information, but it's very hard to get it. And the maintaining of the system is very hard. And this also burns a little bit the staff that will be using the system. Another situation is that we realize that the cost versus what it was allowing us to do is disproportionate. So it's going to be a big software or a big implementation. And usually the thing that will show it is that what is something that I do see often is that we choose an ERP. We go with the system because it's the one that we were told that is going to be the one that will solve the problem. But then we implement it and we realize that there's other system on the market that will give us the same information, will give us the same ease of use or even better, but at a fraction of the cost. So this is where we have to be careful exploring the solution. It's a little bit like buying a car. If you go to your dealer and say, okay, even if your car is good and you say, I don't like my car anymore, of course, he's not going to try to convince you to stay with your current car. You say, okay, what are the problems? What are the issues that you're seeing? Okay, we can solve that problem with this new product, with this. That's where we have to be careful and be pragmatic on is, okay, what is the system that I want to implement? Is it something easy to maintain, because sometimes we might have the best solution with a high price to it, but other times we can find an equivalent with different system to build it to, let's say, 90% of the solution, but at a fraction of the cost, and then we can do the 10% with a workaround. That's where we have to adapt and be pragmatic on what do we need out of the system, because if we try to be too perfect and solve all the problems, that's where we fall in the trap where, okay, it's 100%, the effort that is going to take is going to be way more than 90% of the system. And
Yeah.
understanding what information do you need, what are the pain points of the organization internally, and see, okay, is there something, I'm all for technology, but if something that I do manually is taking me less time and with more ease than with the technology, unfortunately, I'll choose the manual process for that specific task, but 90% of it can all be solved with different solutions.
That's I've had that conversation so many times because we oftentimes we're moving people from spreadsheets. I think the record we heard just a couple of weeks ago was an organization that had 52 tabs in their spreadsheet to forecast their cash flow. And not with them, but what I've heard in the past with other times talking with people is they want every single thing magically automated. And sometimes it's like, look, we're going to save your entire finance team 20% each, like days, your entire team together will save weeks of time every week, but it's going to take you 5 minutes to enter this number. and it's like, well, I thought it was all automated. No, we're going to get you 99% of the way, but it's not in a system, and so sometimes it's getting buy-in and getting people to understand like the forest through the trees. We can give you a really good result. And that's what we're going for. The goal is to get something really workable.
Mhm. Exactly. And we need to look at, okay, what are we doing at the moment, and understanding the current system, where also the other pitfall is that we go to a new system without understanding, okay, what are we doing right now? Is done well? What is done not most efficiently? And trying to transpose those to the new system. And we're also, we might gain efficiency in certain areas and lose a little bit on other areas. But the important is that the whole picture, are we gaining efficiency? Even
Yeah.
sometimes, because the system in the end, it's all input and output of information. What is the easiest way to input the information? Is it through a system? Is it through manually entering the information? But this is the critical part where we try to simplify it and capture the data. Okay, what kind of information tags do we need to report to, in the end, get the reporting that we want? Because in the end, sometimes we go to the implementation, we look at the internal process, and we get lost in the details of the internal process, where in the
Mhm.
end, what do we want? Okay, management, the owner of the organization, the CFO that are taking the decision. Okay, what kind of report do you need? Sometimes they might get way too complicated reports. How many times I've asked clients, can you send me the reporting that you have at the moment that you prepare every month? So you receive a few Excels with a few reporting that they spend a lot of time in uh, producing, analyzing the data, cleaning it up, and putting in a right format. But then if you go on the other side and you look at management, okay, how do you use that report? Sometimes 50% of the report are not used, but we don't,
Mhm.
because we were used to preparing the report for management. We continue to do it, but that's where we need to understand, okay, what is the information that is important for decision making? Is there something that we account for but doesn't really add value? And that's where we reverse engineer to make sure that, okay, how do we simplify for everybody else using the system so they can update it without going too complicated, without complexifying the internal procedures as well, because we're touching multiple factors. So we might have management, what information they need. We have employees. Is it an easy system to use? Because we can build a system that you'll have all the reporting with all the detailed information that you want. But if it takes 1 hour to enter in an old system or in a complicated way, we're not advancing
Mhm.
toward our objective. So that's important to understand. Okay, what is the result that we're looking for? Most of the time when we look at it, we're able to know, okay, this is we can attain it. Okay, this we might need to tweak a little bit the system to see how we can get that information. So that's where it's important
Yeah.
to reverse engineer from that and not go from, okay, my operation, what do I need to do to replicate them? Because sometimes we might even have tasks that are not necessary in the new system.
I think one of the things that we see as well is, uh, like you're talking about understanding everybody's role, understanding all of the needs for everybody from top to bottom. And I think what happens a lot of times is and I completely understand it because management teams are incredibly busy. Oftentimes the CFO is the one driving this forward. They're always busy and they have generally a bit of a bigger problem. And they just say, okay, I got to get that solved. They start talking with salespeople of 2 or 3 ERPs. And of course, the salespeople are like, yeah, we can make it fly. We can do everything. And they never really totally understand what their needs are. The sales people they're talking to don't really understand their needs. And then they sometimes will just make a decision without really understanding. And like you said, then they're way down the path before they say, oh, wow, we missed something here. Like the management team really needs this one report that we cannot run from this. How do you, I guess, what are your recommendations? Like where should they start to be able to take control of that understanding of the organization without making it a full-time job to be able to do it?
This is something that if we say document everything, try to understand all the role. It might seem like a big job, but in the end, most of the people are aware of what they're doing. They see what is done right, what is not ideal in their current system, and we just need to look at, okay, what our basic needs are. So if we go, let's say, with an accounting system, okay, we need to have profit and loss at the end of the month. We need to have our balance sheet. I need to know where my banks reconcile, and then we add on top of that, and we try to solve real problems where, okay, what is your issue? Is it something that if you don't have the information, is it going to affect your decision taking? Is it going to affect how you allocate resources to different departments? Is it going to affect your sales goal, your organizational goals? And most of the time, what we notice is that there's a lot of things, and that's also the how the legacy system used to function, is that you need to update the information, but it's not necessarily useful to do it. Most of the time, it's a limitation of the system. We need to input, for example, I don't know, different information like the department or the class of the transaction. But if we don't use that information, that's where we see, okay, what are my basic needs that you need for to take decision, and let's build on top of that. And we almost restart, but it's not as inefficient as we might think of. Is Sometimes it might be a few hours of a discussion, just going through the high points of the organization, what are our main objective with that. And also the other thing is that we're not trying to build the whole system from the beginning. It must be a phased approach where, okay, what our main problems are, we solve them, and then we build on top of that system. Because one of the aspect that we notice a lot is that once you start using new system, you appropriate them to yourself. So the person that will implement the system for you, they know the system, but they don't know the reality of your business. So they'll show it to you in a way that, okay, this is how we obtain that information. But as you use it, you'll be more efficient on it as well, because you'll get used to it. You'll see other ways of doing things. Let's say, for example, most of the time what I do with my clients is once we do the implementation, I tell them, now I'm better than you at the system. But in the next 6 months, you'll be better than me because you're using it. You're seeing the information that it provides, how to analyze it. And then what I ask them is, okay, if you find something that is solving your problem specifically for you, can you share it with me so I can understand how you're adapting the system to you? Because it's as any object. So let's say, for example, you're going to your driver's license, you're getting a new car. They'll show you how to use the car for as a general. Okay, take the wheel, you change the transmission, what gear you're on. But after that, once you get used to it, you see things that you wouldn't see if you're not using the system every day. So that's where we try to simplify it and do in a phase approach, where also we don't want to have a full implementation of solving every problem. Let's start simple. Okay, we have these 3 main problems that we want to solve. We're solving accounting, we're solving expense reports, we're solving reporting. Okay, let's start with that, and then we'll attack the next big problem, because that's also one of the pitfalls, is that we try to solve everything at once. It ends up taking more time and not really solving the problem, because now we're rushed within the operation. It's something that comes on top of that, and that's why it's important to understand what we're implementing. And when we're having the discussion with the client, we try to see, okay, on the long term, is that how would you see the implementation of it? Do you see resistance to change? Would you be comfortable using it that way? This is your old way, this is the new way. Let's implement it and start with solving those problems. Even we know that the extra problem or the extra need will be solved in the future, but they can be done in phase 2, because if we do, we go by phases. We build the foundation of the system. We implement it, and once, if we add, let's say, for example, most of the technology experts, uh, when they start to use a system, they especially that came out, they as the system evolves, if you come in 10 years later and you want to understand that system, it will take you a lot of time because there's been 10 years of change gradually, that an update,
Mhm.
a new function that came. But when you see them every 3 months, every year, it's way easier to adapt than if I come to you and say, okay, this is the whole system, you need to learn it all. It's easier to learn if you go by phases. So this way, the change seems very fluid and very easy to do. And then in 6 month period, 3 months period, you look at the organization and everybody's using the system well, the question will drop rapidly. And if you add every week or every, let's say, month, okay, we have a new update, we're going to include this new function in the system, this is the objective, it's very easier to adapt, because that's the other thing, is that we're switching from something that we're used to doing. And the longer the previous system has been there, the more resistant to change will happen. The more it's going
Yeah.
to be harder to get the use of it. So that's where we need to phase it. But in the end, what we've seen is that it's more efficient than going the whole way right from the beginning, because
Yeah.
once we finish, the implementation is successful.
Well, and the getting everyone involved, because I see this problem too. It's the CFO does a deal and says, I don't want to pick on the CFO, but someone does a deal and says, here's our new system, we're going to start implementing next week, and everyone that actually uses the system is like, you're what? We haven't heard anything, right? And so I'm sure getting them involved right from the beginning, understanding their needs, and then during implementation and all of the training. And I'm sure that must help so much with buy-in to have everybody involved through all of the phases, from understanding the needs all the way through to actually implementing it and actually going live with it.
Exactly. And it's not a job that must be on the internal people, on the internal management, the CFO. That's where we come in and say, okay, we're going to do it for you, but we'll document everything that we go through. And seeing the pain points of each person, because we all have different pain points, because our jobs are not similar. Each person will do it. And those information is gold nuggets when you look at it, because they'll tell you, okay, we have issue entering the information because of that, but also how to reobtain that information. They'll tell you, okay, this is where I see inefficiency, and they'll tell you right away, because as humans, what do we hate to do is doing something that we don't feel that there's an added value, or that's a repetition
Yeah.
of tasks because the system don't communicate. And this will be highlighted right away when you start to talk to people. Like, let's say, for example, I come to you and say, okay, what are the issues that you see in your house? Even if I come do an inspection, I wouldn't have the same view as you do, because you see it every day. You see all the small details, and you know what are the main issues that you would like to be solved. What I would have. It's the same thing with any job description, any role every person is doing, and they'll guide you to the best system. And then you can also manage expectation, because you can tell them right away, okay, this is something that we can solve with the new system, but this is going to be a limitation, because even if it's a new technology, a new ERP kind of like system, it's not going to solve everything, because it's not because it's new that it's better than the previous one. There's overall an advantage to it. But if we
Mhm.
communicate right away, okay, we'll be able to solve most of the problems, but let's say we have this limitation. Most of the time, it's accepted very early on. It's like, no worries on that. I know that the rest of it will be better. I don't mind having a small limitation when the whole process changes a lot. Maybe just a small example like this. I remember going through an organization and we're looking at their internal approval process, the internal control. So it's an organization that was audited. They had to have a good internal control, but they were using DocuSign, for example, to go through all the internal approval. But if you
Mhm.
look at each step that they were doing, it was creating a lot of time, but it was unnecessary, because in the end, you have to have good internal control to have a good audit report. So once we went through this, we understood, first of all, the whole approval metrics internally, how they work, what are the particularities, what are the standard approval workflows, when do they go out of the standard workflow. And then once we show them, okay, this is the new system, system, the excitement was there. So not only the management wants to do the change, so there's advantages on the cost, there's advantage on ease of use, but also from internally, because we're used to have technology around us. For example, on our cell phone, we're every day on our cell phone, so we cannot ask someone that streams on different platforms, uses the cell phone. Everything is technological, and then we come with a very manual process that even a small app sometimes will have the solution for that.
So now we're actually getting into the question that I think a lot of organizations maybe don't ask. When they see that there's an issue with their ERP, they start shopping. And sometimes, like you mentioned, it's like the legacy system, everyone's used to it. It may actually be working. And yeah, it might have some thing it can't deliver, but maybe it can. And I think a lot of times it's overlooked that these systems oftentimes are evolving, and there's new updates, there's things coming all the time. There's third-party integrations. There's all sorts of things that potentially could be done. And I guess that's the question, is sometimes the system you already have the best one if you unpack some of that and actually are able to evolve it.
Oh, definitely. And this is usually my first step. And it comes a little bit unnatural when someone asks you, okay, I want to switch a system, and you go through their current system and you say to them, you're not going to get better if you implement a new one. You're not utilizing the full functions of your system, or it just you think there is a better option for that, because that's where, let's say, one of the things that will push people to go shop around is that, okay, my system works very well, but it's very manual, it's very intensive on resources. But
Mhm.
usually you maximize your system. I know that it might take a lot of time, but the information you're getting, re-implementing it with a new system is going to be very hard. It's a one-off. It's very rare, but most of the time it does happen. And we try
Mhm.
to see, okay, is your system good at the moment, and also the timing of the implementation, because your system might be very good. It's just that the new system don't offer the same information, the same let's say good setup of what you need, because you've adapted the system, you try to tweak it to have the information that you want, and you maximize the utilization. That's where we're going to come in and say, okay, there's nothing on the market that will allow you to have the same information. This is where you're going to have losses. This is going to be the trade-off. And most of the time, if you look at those where because their system are so well set up and well used, or have the potential to be well used, that if you compare them to a new solution, most of the time the efficiency won't be that dramatic, because you still enter the information. So you would need to set up the new system to enter the information the same way, because you're used to having very detailed reports fitted to your decision making process. But the problem is going to be, okay, the new system, we're able to do it. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. But are we
Yeah.
really solving the problem for you? So that's where, when I look at the organization and their pain points that they have, I put myself in their place. I want to understand, okay, if I was at their in their place, would I be happy to do the switch? And this is where the expertise comes in place, because we know the different systems that your organization might need. And it's important for us to tell you, okay, we can do the switch, but there's not going to be necessarily an advantage for compared to your old system. But there might be different situation where it might happen. For example, you want to sell the business, but you need to have a good system in place for the new seller, because it's going to be very hard to transfer the knowledge from the old one. That might be a situation, but it's important to understand it and be very transparent from the beginning, because we're looking on the long term. So as much as
Mhm.
it is the 10, 20 years when you do the implementation, when you know that you want to change, it's the same thing with the current system that you have. And it's important to understand, do we need to change? Is it something that is going to be adding value? If we get, let's say, 10% of efficiency on the new system, is it really worth all the time that we're going to go through?
And I imagine the other question is now the time as well. So technology is, of course, racing forward so fast. A lot of the problems that companies have may be better solved 2, 3, 5 years down the road. And so it might also just be not a question of, hey, let's commit to our current system for the next 10 to 20 years, but maybe it might get us 3 years more. It might get us 5 years more. And it's not only going to save us a lot of money in the short term, it's not going to disrupt the business. It becomes much more, it probably becomes much more of a difficult decision when they can factor in all of these things rather than grass is always greener. I'm just going to go get a new system and it'll work like magic, which we know doesn't always play out that way.
Exactly. That's where we need to, and to be pragmatic on that, because in the end, all of this, everything that we're doing is solving a problem. It's how we use the current system, how we use the tool. There's going to be a point where there's going to be definitely an improvement on doing the change. But if it works, it's not broken, everybody is happy with it, then it can it's a good decision. So let's say, for example, sometimes I compare myself. We have all those systems, but if you look historically, I'm a big history fan. If you look at the sometimes the planning that military leaders had to do when they went through a campaign, if they had an Excel sheet, I don't know where they would be at the moment. I think each of the great empires, we would be under them at the moment, because if you look at the complexity that they have with manual system, and that's where we need to be careful with technology. Is it really something that is going to help me, or is it just an add-on to look better or more technological than we think we are not? So that's where we need to be careful in saying, okay, is it something that is going to solve the problem? As much as I love technology, my pragmatic side will always bring it back to the base level, where, okay, in the end, what are we looking for is obtaining the organization goal, is having an added value that will generate profit. If those issues are solved, and then we can improve on it gradually. And see, also, sometimes if we document the pain points that we have, we might have some pain points that are very easy to solve with one simple solution that does not need to be connected to the whole system. And that's where we need to look at different options and make sure that, where I think I would be careful is, okay, this system, it is going to solve all my problems, I go for it right away. Without, you cannot in 1 hour decide for an organization, okay, this is the system that you need. No, it's going to take more time than that. And not a crazy amount of time, but at least a few hours of discussion with management, with the person, just so he understands the needs that you have. Is it something that we'll see a real improvement on that? Is it, but if you, it's like if you go, I don't know, again, to the car dealership, and you tell them, I'm in construction, I need a pickup truck. Okay, I have one for you right away. Okay, but you don't know my load, you don't know my the distance that I travel. Do I travel on terrain road or on a highway? All of these factors, we need to understand them to make sure that the change is beneficial. And the other thing is that it's on the long term as well. So I prefer to take a little bit more time in the beginning. It might feel counterintuitive, but it's way more efficient on the long term, because something that is done right is efficient, because you don't need to come back to it. Where the loss of efficiency and resources happen is really when we go too fast, and then for the next few years we're stuck back and forth readapting the system. And that's something I see very often, and but it's part of the reality. So that's what we need to be careful for. Do we want to go into that project? Because the system is not going to affect only the usage of the system. It's going to affect the information that you get, and understanding what we try to avoid is in 3 months, 6 months, realizing that we forgot something. Of course, there's going to be adaptation to the business, because the business will evolve. We will open a new location. My system needs to be able to report on different locations. I have new grants, and I need to report on the allocation of those amounts. But this is something that will be added as we go. But if there is something, for example, I need to know the all the parts that I sold for that machine, the serial number of that machine, but I do not think about it from the beginning, and I need to implement it, it's going to take more time, because you have to adapt your system, you have to retrain the staff, then you have to go back to the older transaction to modify them to affect them to the right place. So it's a double-edged knife. It might be very efficient if we do it right, but if we don't go take the time to do it, it will go the other way. It's going to be way less efficient than we think.
Yeah.
It might be scary, but it's just to solve the problem for the future. We take 1 month more, let's say in the beginning, through the exploration process, but we're not saving a few weeks or a few months. We're saving years of time invested in the future.
Yeah. So just if you could, this has been really valuable, like really terrific insight on this. If you were to give a talking with a CFO and he said, okay, here's your best practices, here's just a few tips of where to start and to make sure that you're going down the right path, what would you suggest?
So first of all, it's looking at the financial information. See, okay, what are the reports that I'm getting? And just asking the team around, what are the pain points? So for example, we might have some reports that are not given in time. what might be the reason for that, for example? What are we seeing that is affecting our operation that is creating a lot of stress? So let's say, for example, we go on the NPO side, most of the time it will be reporting, because we're not able to provide the reporting for different grant organization, to the government, to different entities. And if we go back, it's okay, my system is very old, the usage of it is very slow. I need to enter the information in one place, have it approved elsewhere, then it's an email communication. Then once it's done, I have to save it enough. Where we see that it's becoming a lot of steps and it's affecting the rest of it, that's where we need to focus. So the way I would do it is, as pragmatic as I can be, is what are my 5 main issues that I see that are affecting the organization? Or my parking
Mhm.
space is a little bit far. This is not a problem that I would see as important right away. But we're
Mhm.
having 400 receipts that are not accounted for in my warehouse. Okay, that's an issue. That is something. If you don't have time to solve efficiency problem because you're too stuck in operation, okay, that might be an issue. That's where we try to take what are the main one. Okay, this is the
Mhm.
problem that I see. And if we do it in an efficient way, first of all, management, what do you see are the 5 top problems? And then we, as the team, can you please send us an email? What are the top 5 issues that you're seeing from your side? And most of the time they will coincide. At least the 3
Yeah.
first, they should be coinciding. And this is what we attack first. Because if we solve the big rocks from the beginning, then the smaller are left, and we'll have the confidence with the big one that we just saw. So we're not trying to reanalyze the organization to see, okay, where my issues are. Okay, what are my 5 problems? And most of the time, if I ask you this question, it will pretty much come very fast because you live them every day. You have an example that happened today or last week, but it's something
Mhm.
that is very present. And you feel that if you solve that problem, you'll be less anxious, more happy, more efficient in what you do.
Yeah. So, is that how? Tell me a little bit about Oscorp, and also how people can find you and get hold of you.
Yeah, so we're a Montreal-based firm, but we're completely virtual. So we serve clients across Canada and the US. And our main focus, we're all accountants. So our background is technology and accounting. So we're very passionate about technology, but we also have an accounting background where that's what helps us implementing the system in the best way possible. So, for example, from the beginning, understanding how the usage of the system will affect the financial information and the financial reporting that the management will get. This is what differentiates us. And when we're going into a business, that's what we try to do, because the accounting part, what we see in the industry is that we will have more technological people, but it's going to be there's going to be a weakness on the financial reporting side. And also the accountants, they're good at getting financial information, but on the technology side, it's not as efficient as it should. So that's where we come in, and we make sure that what we implement is compliant on the financial side. And this most of the time will solve the issue, because the audits are use a lot of resources for the organization, the governmental audits and the tax assessment. So we try to solve that. And okay, this is how we do it. We get the information right, and this is how we also validate the system. And we accompany the client in their journey through the implementation, making sure that it works well, and we can help review the information. So we can reach us through our website. We have a LinkedIn page. Also, we're part of the BSP program with the Intuit, so the business solution providers, where if you reach out to Intuit, they might refer you to us depending on their location and your needs. Um, that's about that.
No, that's terrific, and I'll make sure that your web address, LinkedIn address, is all down in the show notes. And thanks so much, Azat. This was really terrific. There's lots to unpack there. That's really important because, boy, we hear companies regretting some of the decisions and some of the processes they've taken when they're getting a new ERP. And uh, take your time and do it right, and it'll make a massive difference.
Exactly, and not one situation. It's not because you already started that we shouldn't go back. On the contrary, we should take the experience and see what was missed during that implementation. What can I learn from it? Because every experience is something. It's a learning opportunity. If we can take
Mhm.
that, it might save on the future. Sometimes we think, oh, we lost some time, but maybe in reality not, because we highlighted the items or aspect that is very important that we take into account when we retry the process. So it's all, there's nothing lost. Everything is important,
Yeah.
all the journey.
So I encourage you guys, if you are considering moving to a new ERP, also take a look at the one you have now and go talk with Azat and his team and find out if that's the best path forward. And also, I want to mention, if you're on a finance team and you guys are buried in spreadsheets to your cash flow scenario modeling, please come see us at Dryrun, because we're going to help save a ton of time. We're going to give you extremely clear reporting for management so they can understand exactly where you're headed. And we're going to bring a level of accuracy that you likely don't have right now when you're buried in spreadsheets. Come and visit us at dryrun.com. Thanks again, Azat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.